About being an expert of any kind, but I can run my mouth like nobody's business. So again, my name is Chris. I've been here in Florida for a hot minute. I'm one of those forever students. So I grew up in Michigan. My mom and my grandparents, were gardeners. Spent about 15 years in Kansas City, Missouri, and now here. So it's been a fun journey getting to know, extreme cold of Michigan to, extreme Florida. We'll just leave it at that. To be able to get to know the different growing zones for me it's so much fun. In my opinion, the day that we stop learning, we're dead, or we should be dead. I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to learn. And the nice thing about being in a context like this is we're all on such different journeys. We get to learn from one another. And so I think some of the benefit is not just being able to sit and learn together, but the dialogue afterward that takes place is fantastic. And Florida is such a rich place as far as the culture of gardening and abundance and homesteading. And there's so many incredible groups online and different forums that we have a wealth of information at our fingertips. And if you have ever been a part of one of those online forums or discussions, you'll be quick to realize there's more than one way to skin a cat or to plant a tree, for example. There's so many different techniques and strategies. And so the nice thing about coming together like this is you can kind of eat the chicken and throw out the bones. Find the things that are going to work for you well on your site, on your property, with your family, with your time and financial commitments, and then set the other things on the shelf, if that makes sense. So today we're going to dive in and talk about late spring food forest maintenance. In Florida, we are a very different scenario than the other states in the union. When I first came here, I started gardening on the same schedule that I did when I was in Michigan or when I was in Kansas City. Beloved, it doesn't work. You just can't do a vegetable garden in Florida in the summer. I mean, you can, but you'll have no hair left. I mean, literally, you'll just be pulling your hair out, fighting insects and heat and, the state bird, the mosquito. I mean, it's so hard to garden in the summertime. So it does take a little bit of a shift in our methodology in how we look at gardening and abundance. Now, it doesn't mean we don't do anything in the summer. Now, granted, I enjoy air conditioning a lot in the summer. I mean, we are blessed and we are fortunate. But when we look at our state and our time schedules, this is the time of year when we shift from focusing on the winter vegetable garden to mainly looking at the food forest. I'm talking about fruit trees, berry bushes, nut trees, that sort of thing, tropical spinaches. So this time of year, almost like clockwork, the last week of May until the last week of September, that's our rainy season. And it could rain in Florida for 5 minutes every day, or it could be sunny for 5 minutes every day, but it's wet. And the challenge with that high heat and high humidity is it's the perfect recipe for powdery mildew and insect problems and all the other things. And so right now we're making that shift from our annual garden beds. We're slowly starting to put those to sleep for the summer, whether that means straw mulch on top or sun hemp or some kind of a cover crop. And then we're shifting our focus to our fruit trees and our berry bushes and that sort of thing. So we don't stop and do nothing. But in Florida, we're continually on. We don't really get a winter season like every other state kind of gets. We don't really have a downtime. So in Florida, think about it like learning to garden at a marathon pace. So this is not a sprint where you've got to hurry up and get everything in from April until October. You've got a marathon. So all year you do a little bit, then you rest. You do a little bit, and then you rest. And we develop a little bit of a different ebb and flow to our system and our rhythms than many other places. So if you are familiar with the website PermacultureFX.com, we basically put out every month a garden to-do list of here's what you do in the shed, here's what you do around the yard, here's what you do with your chickens, your goats, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Here, we kind of divide it up, and it's free, so you're not paying money or whatever for it. But I want to take some time today to go into a little bit more detail on what does the summer, the late spring, early summer, what does that look like for us, both in the garden and in the food forest. How many of you guys have been in Florida more than 10 years? The vast majority, that's awesome. So natives, born and raised. So many of you are probably very used to this rhythm. But with things, things like whether it's you call it climate change or whatever you want to call it, our weather extremes are getting more extreme more frequently. So whatever the cause of that is, science has been debating this for 20, 25 years, so I'm not going to claim to have any of those answers. We don't know what's causing the differences in our weather patterns, and it could be something as simple as the natural rotations of the earth and the natural cycles of the earth. It could be global warming. What causes it? I have no idea. But what I do know is in my garden and in the food forest, there are certain things now that we can keep in mind, that we should keep in mind, that we may not have had in the forefront, 10 or 20 years ago. So right now, in the vegetable garden, I want to cover about 5 different areas today. In the vegetable garden area, the main things, pretty much the only things that we can plant really well right now would be sweet potatoes, okra, tropical spinaches, and edible hibiscus that we're going to go into more in depth in a minute. These are kind of the tried and true, things that you can plant this time of year. Now, personally, I do sweet potatoes in Florida year-round because it's kind of a buffer crop. All you have to do is take a little, we call them slips. It's a stem of a sweet potato, put it in a glass jar in a sunny window and walk away for a couple weeks. And the roots grow and you stick it in the ground. If you kill a sweet potato, congratulations. They are so hard to kill. But the nice thing about them is you can eat the greens. I'm a foodie. That's why I garden. I love the food aspect. I love the health aspect. I love to saute those greens up, some butter, salt, pepper, garlic, a little bit more garlic, splash of white wine, and then just some nice Parmesan cheese on top and eat those sauteed greens, and they're fantastic. One of the sweet potatoes that we have here, that if you want the slip, we'll give one to you, is called the Okinawan purple sweet potato. So the inside of the potato is like violet purple. It's just this radiant purple color, which is wonderful because it has all those anthocyanins for your diet. It's arguably the healthiest sweet potato in the world. So if you want to try a slip of a sweet potato, we'll give it to you. Just give them a lot of space. Sweet potatoes very easily will take up this entire area, and wherever you see leaves, there's probably potatoes underground in that same spot. So learn the lesson that I had to learn the hard way. Don't plant them at the base of your fruit trees because you'll never get all those sweet potatoes out. I was in there literally by hands grinding my fingernails off trying to get those sweet potatoes. So give them a lot of room, put them in a grow bag, and you're usually pretty good to go. But this time of year for me personally, sun hemp is my godsend. This is not hemp as in the cannabis. It's actually in the bean or the pea family. And it'll grow to be about 8 or 9 feet tall by August. And what we do in Florida is you plant these sun hemp seeds, and because it's a bean, it's capturing atmospheric nitrogen and it's putting that nitrogen into the soil. So what does that mean? You're growing fertilizer. So you're literally growing nitrogen fertilizer. In August, you chop it, you drop it, and bury it with a little bit of dirt, and then by the time you plant in September, you've actually added organic matter or biomass to your soil, and you've added nitrogen to your soil. Not to mention, you've covered the top of your soil all summer, so the sun isn't baking your garden beds. So again, it gets to be pretty huge. Now, if you do have livestock, cattle, horses, chickens, whatever, they will eat sun hemp, but you want to make sure that you feed the animals before it flowers. the chemical constituents in sun hemp change, and it can cause stomach upset in livestock if you feed it after it flowers. So it's going to be the best to chop and drop right before it flowers. Now I like the flowers on them, so I do leave some of the flowers for my pollinators, but for the most part, I use sun hemp or some kind of a cover crop. I cover my soil and I just let it rest. You know, maybe plant some native wildflowers. You know, some of the things for me that I plant year-round besides those sweet potatoes, sunflowers are year-round for me, zinnias, cosmos. About every 2 weeks, I'll just take some of those seeds and I'll just poke some in the ground, and then you've always got some nice cut flowers that are ready for you to be able to use. But for us in the garden right now, it's kind of the night time. Things are going to bed, we're letting them be, let the sweet potatoes kind of take over the planet, and then focus on all of the tropicals, the fruit trees, the berry bushes, that sort of thing. So I want to share a few of my favorite summer salad greens. Now this is not going to be your spinach, your kale, your arugula. Those things in Florida are better suited for our fall, our winter, our early springtime. But we can grow tropical spinaches that will come back perennially year after year after year. And many of these, not only are the greens edible, but the flowers are edible. So it does serve multiple purposes. So here's some of the favorite ones that are on my list. Probably the most healthy, the healthiest of the ones I'll talk about is called longevity spinach. So this one gets leaves that are about yay big. It grows more as a dense ground cover. So I like to do this one at the base of my fruit trees. Put it at the base of peaches or pear, plum, nectarine, avocado, whatever. Let it just be the ground cover. It's kind of a living mulch. Now you can eat longevity spinach fresh. You can do it with scrambled eggs. That's what I do almost daily. Chickens love it. My quail eat it. Cows and horses go bonkers over this stuff. Now the nice thing with longevity spinach, health benefit-wise, is it normalizes blood sugar and cholesterol levels. So it's not going to raise them or lower them, but it brings them into the normal range. Now I will say this, I have a lot of passion and background for allopathic and naturopathic medicine. However, before you integrate something new into your diet, especially if you are on medications from your family care physician, please run new things by them before integrating them full on into your diet. Everybody's body responds differently to every plant, every food, etc. So for example, dandelions. Dandelions is probably the most misunderstood medicinal plant on the planet. People are killing it in their yards, and I'm begging them to give me the greens, give me the flowers, give me the roots. The flowers on dandelion make a wonderful tea that's really light, and it also acts as a diuretic, so it helps detox the body. You'll urinate more. The greens are a green leafy superfood that tastes incredible, and the roots, when you dry them, are coffee. So it acts very, very similar flavor to coffee. So dandelion, for some people, is very neutral. For others, you'll be peeing 25 times that day because it's really cleansing your body out. So anytime you integrate a new food, try a little bit at first, see how your body does, and let your body tell you what it needs and what's going to be good for it. So longevity spinach is one of my absolute favorites. Its cousin over here is called Okinawan spinach. They look very similar, except for this one gets the purple undersides. And again, those are the antioxidants, the anthocyanins. The difference in where these grow, this one is going to be better in full sun. You can do it at the base of the fruit trees, and it'll be a dense mat. Okinawan is going to be about 24 to 36 inches tall and about 2 feet around, so it's a little bit more kind of bushy or mounding in its shape, and that does better in shaded areas. I have that growing under the canopy of oak trees all over the place because they do well in that full shade, and the purple gets really deep and rich when it gets that little bit of shade protection. So the next one up here is called Suriname spinach. This one is a really nice one to eat fresh and just throw it in salads. The little flowers, the pink flowers, they only stay open until probably 1 or 2 o'clock, and then they close up for the day. But you can eat the flowers. I just did egg salad sandwiches and threw them on an egg salad sandwich wrap with nasturtiums. So it's a really nice edible flower, but again, very, very good for you. This one also has some omega-3 fatty acids, biotin, and a pretty good mineral content as well. Now, all of these tropical spinaches, once you buy them the first time, you'll never have to buy them again. Because literally when you harvest them, You take off a stem of these guys, and then all you do is you peel off the leaves that you're going to be, using to cook with, and then drop this thing in a glass of water and let it root in a sunny window, and then you stick it in the ground, and you're good to go. So in the winter times, like last winter, dude, it was the hardest winter we've had, the old timers are saying, since the 1988-89 frost that basically wiped out the citrus industry. So I was really glad this winter to take in I call it my insurance policy. So any of my more sensitive plants, I'll always take a cutting indoors for the winter, just in case. And I'm very glad I did it this year. But the longevity spinach is a really easy one that you can root out and that you can plant, pretty much wherever you'd like. Anybody need a longevity baby to take home? Get a couple of those guys away. And I think I've got, so this is one of the Suriname spinaches. And I think the Suriname has got like that little bit of a, kind of a lemony, a little bit of a lemony taste to it, but it's delicious. And again, that one is one that you can really easily just take your cuttings, stick it in some water, and you're good to go on that one. A couple more of the tropical spinaches. Brazilian spinach or sisu. This is my favorite one this time of year because honestly it holds up against the heat. So I love it on hamburgers because it still gives you a good crunch on hamburgers when you're barbecuing. So it is a really fun one. Now this one is more of a mounding growth habit. So it's going to be about 12-ish inches tall. The grouping will be about this big around, but it does have that good crunch. Now if you throw it in a salad, it can be a little bit viscous for me in a salad, but it's still quite nice. Aunt Lily's South Sea salad. This is one of my new favorites. In Hawaii, they often call it the meho tree. The leaves will get to be about this big around, but they're kind of tri-colored leaves. So sometimes the leaves are purple, sometimes they're pink, sometimes they're green, sometimes they're white. They just get this nice kind of speckled look to the greens. This grows more as like a dwarf tree in shape, and because the leaves are so big, it's a really nice one to use like for a lettuce wrap. So you can put your, anything you use like a taco shell for or whatever, stuff it all full. I just did egg salad inside a meho leaf to eat it. I really like international cuisine, so I do like dolmas with like the lamb and rice inside, and I use this instead of a grape leaf. So it's a really nice, easy one to. Some of you guys are going, man, I wish I would have sat closer. The downside, it's also me repaying them because it's kind of like the spray zone at SeaWorld when I spit when I talk. So a couple of the edible hibiscus. Now these are all in a similar family to okra. So okra, you can eat the flowers as well as the fruit. South Sea salad is this one here. This one is going to be a little bit more viscous, so it's going to be better in your soups, in your stews, in scrambled eggs. It's not really a cookable one. When I say viscous, I mean it's a nice word for a little mucousy. So it's got a lot more moisture content in them, but it's great for in soups and stews and salads. The flowers have no flavor, but they're packed full of nutrients. So you can make a nice fancy salad at home when you're barbecuing for the 4th, throw some flowers on it, and literally your guests just go, wow, can I actually eat that? And it's beautiful, it's good for you, and it's a really fun one in the garden because it's wispy, it's just got a kind of a cool shape, it looks a little bit like pop. So it's just a fun tree there to be able to grow in the garden. The next one here is called roselle, Jamaican sorrel, it also goes by. So the leaves of roselle are just as usable as the calyxes. Most people are familiar with the calyx, the used flower head, because you can make a really nice cranberry lemonade tea. In the wintertime in Jamaica, this is the little calyx part here. In Jamaica, they'll actually take those and add in cinnamon and nutmeg and allspice and make this really nice, warm, kind of mulled wine flavored drink for the holidays. The leaves of roselle have a nice lemon flavor to them, so think fish tacos. I mean, any kind of tacos, but fish tacos. Put those nice lemony flavored leaves on it, gives it a good zest to it. So this is a really fun one. It does get to be pretty tall, and you do need to save seeds of them every year. So any of the hibiscus family, I always try and save seeds on these guys just because they are a little bit, I was going to give them seeds. I'll give you the next one. So they are a little bit more sensitive. Cranberry hibiscus is the last one. I'm giving it right to you. Cranberry hibiscus is my absolute favorite tropical spinach. The leaves taste like cranberry lemonade. They're so stinking good. Even kids that are real picky eaters, because they taste like cranberry lemonade, just show them you can eat the leaves. You can eat the leaves, guys. And the first time they eat them, you'll see the kids in the garden ripping them off your plant. Your plant's gonna be a stick before long. It also makes a really good tea, and if you put it on ice, add a little bit of cane sugar, it's almost like Kool-Aid, really. So it's a very nice edible. So the second area that I want to talk to you about today is fertilization in Florida. General rule of thumb, when we look at our food forest, fruit trees, berry bushes, and nut trees, think late February, June, and September. Late February, June, and September. Those are the key windows that we want to fertilize in. But here is the caveat. In June, you only have 2 weeks to fertilize in June. I want to say that one more time. 2 weeks to fertilize in June. From the second week of June until September, do not fertilize anything. Not your garden, not your yard, not your fruit trees, not your berry bushes. Why, you ask? Thanks for asking. The reason why is because in Florida, our sand leaches those nutrients into the soil, and it's causing algae blooms. Most of the algae blooms that we're having, both UF and the other major universities are saying is mostly because of the nitrogen and phosphorus-based fertilizers. And it doesn't matter if it's organic, if it's chemical, if it's synthetic, it doesn't matter, what it is. Do not fertilize the second week of June until the first week of September. You want to let nature run its course. Now that being said, the first 2 weeks of June are a fantastic time to fertilize because the fruit trees are now in that fruit set phase. So all of those nutrients you put on right now, they're gonna get sucked up by that tree really, really fast because that tree it's hungry because it's producing, it's setting those fruits. So right now is the time, if you've got the next 2 weeks, get as much fertilizer as you can on the plants. Now, obviously, at the farm here, we use organic farming practices. But organic farming doesn't mean that it's actually good for you or for the soil. Here's what I mean by that. So some of the organic fertilizers that we buy now, and I have no problem saying names, Miracle Grow Organic being one of them, the US is getting real sneaky about what we allow and what we are sneaking into our fertilizers. Now, any synthetic fertilizer, the way that synthetic fertilizers deliver nitrogen is through salt. Because what happens is some salt or some derivative of salt, just like in a human, what happens if you drink salt water? You get thirsty. You start drinking more and more and more. So you're uptaking more minerals, more nutrients. So that's literally what happens with your plants, is when a salt-based fertilizer hits the roots, the plant goes into drinking mode. So that's why it greens up, it gets so lush, so juicy, so full, because it just got doused with salt, basically. The problem with salt and sand is it salinates our soil. That salt stays residually in our soil. Now, if you go down the road, anywhere in this area, especially in Claremont, take a look at the old citrus groves. How do I know this? Because I live right next door to a citrus grove that has not been touched in about 12 years. But when you look down the lanes where the trees are, it's still bare dirt. And at first people go, well, it's because of the Roundup and all the bad stuff. It's actually not. That's actually gone. That's out of the soil after a fairly short amount of time. It's the salt. It's the fertilizers, and that salt level in the soil can stay for decades. So when you go down the road now and look at these abandoned citrus groves, there's hardly any weeds still under the base of the trees, and it's not because of Roundup, it's because of the fertilizer. So even things like Miracle Grow Organics, they're sneaking salt into it. So when you look at the number one ingredient in that specific fertilizer, it's called soy protein hydrosylate. Now here's where it gets really nerdy and sciencey, so if this isn't of interest to you, tune out. If it is of interest, you are my people. So soy protein hydrosylate is allowed in the US to be 35 to 40% MSG, monosodium glutamate, which is what we're trying to avoid when we eat foods. Why would we put it on our garden? It just makes zero sense to me, but they don't have to put it on the label because we're allowed to say that it's soy protein hydrosylate. We're allowed to say that it's organic, even though it's also genetically modified soy. but it's still considered organic fertilizer. So all fertilizers are not the same. So what do you look for when you find a good fertilizer? Look for whole ingredients, not just organic. Look for things like compost, manure. So for example, the fertilizer, and I'm saying that in quotes, that Luke sells here, it's actually better called a soil builder, because what's in it? Poultry manure, azomite, which is a mineral, and magnesium. That's it. It's literally whole mineral ingredients. It's basically pelletized compost is what you're buying that's really concentrated. What I do like about Luke's is it's inoculated with mycorrhizal fungi, which is ideal for fruit trees because it expands the root system, but that's a whole other conversation. So the other things that you could add on, blood meal is fantastic this time of year because it's very high in phosphorus. So that's going to be helping with our flowers. Kelp is great. Kelp does not actually fertilize, but it increases the plant's natural ability to uptake minerals. So you're not fertilizing with kelp, and you can literally take seaweed, wash it off so the salt is off it, and throw it at the base of your tree. Even algae, if you have a pond, throwing algae at the base of your trees or burying a little bit is wonderful. And then honestly, probiotics, because probiotics are going to increase the overall health of the tree, but increase also what they're able to take up. So when we look at any kind of a fertilizer, you usually see on the bag or the box, it'll say like 10-10-10 or 5-10-5. I want to talk a little bit about what that actually means in really simple ways. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium is the basic breakdown, but here's how you decode it. Leaf, flower, fruit. So if your tree is not growing good green new growth, you're short in this number. So you want a higher nitrogen level. If you're getting a lot of green growth, but man, I'm not seeing any flowers, you're probably short in phosphorus. Now, is this true 100% of the time? No, nature is never 100% of the time, but 95%, that's also a made-up number, is also 100% true. So if you're short and you're not getting flowers, then focus on phosphorus. If you're getting flowers and no fruit, try adding potassium or potash. The easiest way to get that is to soak your banana peels in a big jar for a couple days and then dump the water at the base of your fruit trees. You can use actual wood ash. Do it in small quantities because it can mess with the alkalinity of the soil. But hopefully that is helpful. So when we fertilize in Florida, let's talk about our February 1st, and then I'll talk about June and then September. These are the main whole ingredient fertilizers that I would be using in February. These are going to be our higher nitrogen. So blood meal, very high nitrogen. I typically only apply about half of whatever is recommended to blood meal because blood meal can burn your plants. It's a little bit warm. Compost or manure, fish emulsion is great. If any of you guys are fishermen, start burying the fish guts and the fish bones at the base of your fruit trees. And it's wonderful. Kelp, and again, probiotics. The probiotic that I use in my farm and on the garden is called BioAg. If you go to the PermacultureFX.com, click the link for products. I have it listed there that you can just click on it. I don't sell it myself, I just have it for easy access for the link. In June, here's the kind of list of the ones that I would do in June. The one that I added in here is worm tea. You can actually do this pretty much year round. For the vast majority of families, unless you have 8 to 10 kids, which is entirely possible, most families don't need to have a compost pile. I would literally forego composting in a pile format and just stick with worm compost. Buy a worm bin because you're going to get a continual flush of worm juice and compost tea. I got mine from, Uncle Jim's worm farm, and it just comes as kind of a barrel with a spigot on the bottom. Luke has one over there, and you literally, when you add in your water, go to the bottom, open up the spigot, you got worm juice not for you to drink, but you put like 1 cup in a 5-gallon bucket of water, and your plants go bonkers over it. I mean, it is absolutely fantastic stuff. It's extremely bioavailable. And honestly, for most families, unless you have 8 kids or more, it's a better bang for your buck as far as composting. So the next one it would be September. And then in September, this is when I shift from fertilizing to trying to get my trees ready for winter. So in September, that's when I'm applying my compost and my wood chips. I would say that area, the wood chip mulch and compost, this is the area where most people, 95% of people, fail when they're planting fruit trees. And I'll tell you this, I do a lot of property consultations and designing for people on properties, and I would say 8 times out of 10, people get really zealous. They just put all the fruit trees in, and then they hope they're going to do the best that they can. Now, I give like 3 pages of planting instructions because the difference is massive when you compost and mulch. And I'm not talking, just a little bit of mulch on top to make it look pretty. I'm talking 4 to 6 inches deep of wood chips at all times. Now, keep it away from the trunk because you don't want it to rot the trunk, but literally 4 to 6 inches deep of wood chips around every fruit tree, every berry bush, every nut tree. And how far out do you go? To the edge of the canopy. So if your canopy goes out 6 feet, go straight down, and there's where your ring is going to be for your wood chips. The easiest way to get them, you can sign up on websites like chipdrop.com, but it takes 5 ever to actually get your wood chips. The best thing that you can do is when you see your neighbors getting tree services done, pull up to the driver and say, I'll give you $50 in cash if you bring those over to my house when you're done, and they always do it. So and honestly, you're gonna pay $400 to $800 for wood chips to be brought to your house, so $50 to tip a driver to bring them over that same day is well worth it. So September, that's when I'm refreshing my wood chips. Now I do wood chips in the food forest and straw, not hay, straw on veggies. And here's why. So wood chips, when they decompose, are gonna create a fungal, mushroom-based environment. Most fruit trees and berry bushes prefer a fungally-based environment. The opposite is true for vegetables. Most soft-stemmed plants, anything that has a soft, watery stem, they want a bacteria-based environment. So on those type of plants, on your veggie garden, you're gonna be using soft stem mulch like straw. And again, you're gonna go 4 to 6 inches deep. It seems obnoxious, but here's what it does besides build your soil. You don't have to weed hardly ever. And in Florida, that is a godsend. We have those, we have pretty much anything in Florida nature will kill you. We have scorpions and coral snakes and you name it, and it's probably gonna bite you or kill you in Florida. It's ridiculous. So for me, I don't wanna weed every day. I wanna weed 2 times a year. So if you do proper mulching and wood chipping, it's gonna save you so much heartache. When I plant fruit trees, one of my new strategies is buying contractor paper from the paint supply section. It's $15. These are 140-foot rolls, which to me, this is beautiful because I roll this thing out on the grass. I don't take up all the grass before I plant the fruit trees. Then I place all my fruit trees on this roll right where I want them. I cut a little hole, I put it in the ground. I add 1 inch of compost and 4 to 6 inches of wood chips, and then just let it sit there and decompose. And then basically this is gonna be my weed suppressant, but it does decompose after a year. If you've tried those fancy, expensive landscape fabrics, you've learned after a couple years they don't work. The weeds will just start growing on top of them. It's such a gimmick, and it's bad for you in the long run because it's plastic. It's leaching BPA into your soil, and then you're eating BPA. So just skip the fancy landscape fabric and don't let people tell you that you need to use it. Literally go buy a cardboard contractor paper. Or if you're an Amazonaholic, not that I have any issues I need to talk about, if you're an Amazonaholic and you have all those Amazon boxes, you can definitely use those, but I'm a lazy gardener. I don't want to take off all the tape, I don't want to take off all the staples. It's just too much work for me, so for me, $15, I roll this puppy out and I'm good to go. So it's just super easy. Roll that out, do your 1 inch of compost and 4 to 6 inches of wood chips, and you are good to go. So area number 4, this time of year, some of the things to keep in mind. This time of year is when the pests start coming out in full force in Florida. Now there are a couple things that you can do from the purely organic perspective, and if you're gonna keep 3 products on hand, 2, 3, 4, those are the 3 things that I use in my garden. People always ask, well, what do I use for, I don't care what you're gonna finish your statement with, I'm probably gonna use one of those 3 things. So the first thing that I would recommend, wild bird feeding. 100%. If you have fruit trees and berry bushes, you are never going to beat nature. You might as well feed them, you might as well give them an alternative, because the reality is they're great insect control. Those birds are eating 200 to 300 mosquitoes every single day, which is glorious. So just provide a little bit for them. Bird feeders that I like are the suet cake feeders, and then anything with a no mess blend, because I don't want the shells all over my yard and garden. Put them on the opposite end of the yard as your food forest in your garden to kind of give them their area, and then you got your area. And honestly, they're just pretty. They're beautiful. There was a really cool study by the University of Baltimore, Maryland, or University of Maryland at Baltimore, that they combined the sound of songbirds with probiotics. And what they found is that when you combine bird song and probiotics, the stomata of the flower, the inside of the flower, opens up about 60% larger and also far longer, which means you have a much bigger window to get fruit and healthier fruit because it's getting pollinated better. So whatever that reason is, it was divinely knit together that way. There's something about bird song and those probiotics, nature working together. So bird feeding, I cannot recommend it enough. And get some good stuff. Don't buy the cheapest bird seed that you can, because honestly it's insect control, it's free fertilizer in your garden, it's good stuff. If you've got kids, go to Wild Birds Unlimited. It's like a franchise kind of in every city. What I like about Wild Birds, it's the best quality seed. The feeders, and I'm not getting sponsored by them, by the way, I wish. The feeders have a forever guarantee, so if it breaks, you take it back and they fix it for you or give you a new one, which I think is wonderful. But the main reason I like supporting them is because they give feeders full to local schools, libraries, and nonprofit organizations. So if you are connected with a church, a school, a library, a community center, go into the Wild Birds and they'll give you a feeder full of seed to take back to your nonprofit. And I think it's awesome. I believe they still do it as well for homeschool kiddos as well. So it's a great place for learning. And anytime we can support a business that is really supporting learning in the next generation, I'm all about that. Neem oil number 2. Don't even mess with the cheap stuff that's in the prepackaged spray bottle. It's about 3 to 7% neem. Just skip it. Go buy 100% pure neem oil for the same price and mix your own dang spray bottle. Get 100% neem, you're getting 97% more bang for your buck. So it's about $20-25 for a thing of neem that will last you several years. In one spray bottle, I typically put 1 teaspoon of neem, 1 teaspoon of basic H, and 1 teaspoon of probiotics. And that's in my spray bottle for pretty much anything. Neem is great for bad insect control. It's good for controlling powdery mildew or any other fungal or bacterial issues. Sooty mold, scale, it works on a plethora of different things. The key with any spraying in Florida, always do it really early, like 5-6 a.m. in the morning, or at night as the sun goes down. If you do it in the daytime, you're gonna cook your plants. I mean, they'll literally be brown by the end of the day. So always do it kind of late evening or early morning. The next one is called Basic H. It's actually a household cleaner, but think of it like Dr. Bronner's Castile soap, which is not all entirely clean ingredients anymore. Basic H is unscented, plant-based surfactant, which is a fancy word for like a soap, but it's all plant-based. So that's what I use instead of using like Dawn dish soap or Castile soap. The reason why I don't like to use those is the fragrances and the scents and the inorganic ingredients that are in it strip the natural waxy coating off of the leaves. So even though it solves your problem in the moment, your leaves are more prone to fungal and bacterial issues as time goes on. So the nice thing with using a plant-based surfactant is that it's not stripping the natural waxy coating off the leaves. BioEgg, I've already talked about that as the probiotic, and then native pollinating plants. Get bees, butterflies, whatever you can possibly get in. Here we love the greenhouse, or the nursery Green Isle Gardens in Groveland. It's fantastic for native pollinators. They're not organic, but it takes about 1 calendar year for those chemicals to leach out of your soil. But as far as a local source, Green Isle Gardens is wonderful. They have incredible selection and variety with their plants. The other one, if you're out that way, is called Mama G's Farm. Mama, the letter G, Farms. She has really good medicinal perennials, mullein and yarrow, different moringas. So she has a really good selection out there as well. And again, I'm all about supporting the local businesses. The primary reason for that, one, is it is our local economy. It is our local neighbors. But the big reason in Florida is a peach is not a peach is not a peach. So the peaches that you're buying at a box store, and I don't need to say any names, or a store that's nationwide, they're selling the same variety of trees at almost all of their locations. And if you've ever planted a peach that you brought with you from the north down to Florida, it don't work. There's about 3 varieties of peaches that will actually grow in Florida, and they'll actually be good. Tropic Beauty, Tropic Snow, Florida Prince, Amen, Let's Stand. That's about it. So pretty much those other varieties that you're buying at those stores, you might get a tree, but it's either not going to produce good fruit, or it's going to struggle its whole life that, you know, you might as well have just gotten something else that's going to perform better. So, you know, that's for me is why I like to support those local mom and pop shops. So if you are going to plant trees now, these are, I was trying to limit it to 5, but I couldn't do it. So these are the top 5 with some honorable mentions of the ones, if you're going to plant right now, these are the ones to do right now. So the reason why avocado, mango, strawberry tree, cat-like guava, Barbados cherry, these ones need time to root into the ground. You cannot plant these safely in September and expect them to live. Ask me how I know. I've killed a lot of trees. If you like avocados, a couple of the ones that I really like, Mexicola Grande is one of my newest favorites. It's kind of it's a good slicer and dicer, really good guacamole, but it has a nice oil content, so very, very good for you. It's got a little bit of a kind of a manchego cheese kind of flavor to it, I think. My other 2 favorites, if you're a slicer and dicer, go with Winter Mexican. Hands down, Winter Mexican, hardy down to 21 degrees. Amazing slicer and dicer. It makes a good chunky guacamole, but it's not going to be a smooth guacamole. I also like Winter Mexican because it doesn't ripen on the tree. What does that mean? It means you don't have to figure out what to do with 300 avocados in 2 weeks. You can literally leave the avocados on the tree. They start getting ripe around October, and we left them on the tree here until March. That's a huge window to have those avocados. The third avocado, Brogden, is my favorite for guacamole. It's got a nice, smooth, nutty kind of flavor to it. So Mexicola Grande, Winter Mexican, and Brogden are my 3 favorites. I would either do the Mexicola Grande or Brogden, and then a Winter Mexican. The reason why is then you get 2 fruiting seasons. So Mexicola Grande and Brogden are kind of mid-season, so August, September, October, and then Winter Mexican kicks in October, November, December, January, February. Does that make sense? So then you get a big window of fruit. Mangoes, you know, there's like 2,000 varieties of mangoes now. My theory is this: does it taste good? Yep. Sounds good to me. You know, I mean, just when you're looking at the mango rows, Google it and see what the flavor palette is. Once you try a mango that you've grown at home, you will never buy another store-bought mango in your entire life. Same thing with bananas. Store-bought bananas and mangoes, they taste like trash. They're just not good. You know, the bananas in the store are so flavorless. They're just not good. Most of the reason is they pick them so early, the natural sugars aren't even there. So when you start growing this stuff at home, it's a game changer. Number 3, hands down, my favorite fruit we can grow in all of Florida. It is called the strawberry tree or the Jamaican cherry. And there are some around the farm down this way here. There's one out front. There's some in the greenhouse. Just go try some. They're about this big around, like a marble size, and it tastes like strawberry Skittles. I get excited to talk about it. Strawberry Skittles or strawberry cotton candy in flavor, or like Fruity Pebbles, but they're really low sugar and high vitamin C. So you're literally eating your vitamins. And they fruit pretty much all warm months in Florida. They're gonna be fruiting. So they are incredible. They grow like crazy. I planted one in, I think it was August, that was about 2 feet tall. By December, it was 14 feet tall. And just producing like bonkers. So it's a good one. Nope, that one is a self-pollinator. Yep, that one's a self-pollinator. Avocados, okay, technically avocados, there's the whole, like, is it an A, is it a B? Honestly, who cares? There's so many avocados in Florida now, and bees will travel almost 9 miles. You're gonna get a pollinated avocado. So you don't have to have more than one. Now, if you live way out in the middle of nowhere, Timbuktu, which doesn't even exist in this part of Florida anymore, where you have no neighbors for 10 miles, okay, maybe you need to get an A and a B. But the vast majority of people just, you know, one is enough. Mangoes, same kind of scenario. There's many of them. Strawberry tree is a self-pollinator. Cattleya guava or strawberry guava. This one I didn't protect at all in the frost, and it literally did fine. Did not bat an eye. We don't have them here at this farm right now. Lonnie Reed and DeLand love that farm as well. He does have some Cattleya guava. Barbados cherry. Luke has some really good Barbados cherry that are flowering and getting ready to fruit right now. That one is the highest level of vitamin C of any fruit that I know of. The next one that comes closest is probably the goji berry. Goji berry is pretty savory in its flavor, but Barbados cherry, wonderful tree, grows as a dwarf tree or as a bush, gets very, very dense, so you can hedge it really well and do like a living fence line. And then the other honorable mention, mulberries. My favorite mulberry is called the white mulberry. Grows as a tall tree, fruits twice a year, and it tastes like vanilla cotton candy. It's really, really nice. Cherry, the Rio Grande. Again, this is one that is tried and true, doesn't bat an eye in the frost and the cold, but it also grows under the canopy of an oak and still fruits. The flavor, it's the size, about the size of the tip of your thumb, and the flavor is like strawberry plum. Yellow star cherry. This one is a cousin of the Suriname cherry, except it doesn't taste like trash. Suriname cherry, to me, it just tastes like turpentine. It's just not good. Yellow star cherry tastes like citrusy pineapple. So it's a really, really nice flavor and also grows under the canopy of an oak. Guava is great. Luke has yellow guava right now and Ruby Supreme. Yellow is going to taste the best, but Ruby Supreme is going to be the most bug and pest resistant. Ginger and turmeric. This is one of my absolute favorite topics. So these grow under the dense canopy of an oak. There's zero maintenance. In fact, if you try to water them and take care of them, you'll kill them. They just love to be planted and neglected, put up the root in the ground, and then literally come back when the top dies off, dig it up, and you're good to go. And what's nice about it is you only have to have a thumb-sized piece of it to start your crop from next year. So what I do is I harvest it in about December. I save one little piece and I use the rest, for the rest of the season. Throw that thumb-sized piece in the ground in December, and then it just comes right back the next spring, and you can just propagate and go. Luke and Sonia have a really nice, I don't actually know of any other greenhouse in Florida that has the selection of rare ginger and turmerics that they have. And so what I would do, when you buy those little boxes, they're $15 to $35 depending on what one you buy, but you only need a thumb-sized piece. So I would not take that out and stick it in the ground. Spray it off and look at that big root mass and break it into 4 or 5 other pieces. Let them dry for a day or 2 or a week until it kind of hardens off, and then plant, and you'll propagate 5 plants out of one that you bought. So you're going to get way more bang for your buck that way. So those are the 5 trees plus that I would grow right now. And then if you're like me and you want some other good resources that are good native ones, these are some of my favorites right now. Florida Free Living, they're actually doing the video stuff in the back here. They've got an awesome YouTube channel. And what I love about TJ and Shelby is they go visit farms, they go visit other places, food forests, and they show you how other people are doing it. Because that's some of the hardest part is we just need to see a model. I need to see how it works in a backyard in the villages. I need to see how it works on a farm. I need to see how it works on 1/8 of an acre or 80 acres, and they've really captured a lot of great locations. So their Instagram is @GrowYourZone with the underscores, but definitely check out Florida Free Living on their YouTube channel. Native Eats is another good one. Some of the local farms I've listed here, and this is all over the state. Echo and Hart are going to be further south. The Reed Farm is in DeLand. A natural farm, obviously, here. Number 4, if you're on Facebook, check out Small Florida Farms Are a Big Deal. Fantastic, especially if you're looking for really cheap eggs, meat products, whatever. So what happens on those is a farmer will say, hey, I just harvested 80 chickens, they're all organic, I'm not selling them in a store, they're $10 a piece, who wants them? And you can get them right from a farmer, go and see their farm, see how they do things, know where your animals are coming from. And it's not just meat products and eggs, they do a lot of produce there as well. So that's a really nice local resource in this area. See the Stars on Etsy. If you're an Etsy shopper, they have really cool varieties of seeds like the Roselle. That's where we actually have gotten our seeds there. A lot of fun varieties of annual vegetables and crops that are Florida specific. If you've been trying to find the Seminole pumpkin, they have Seminole pumpkins. And that one is a hard one to find the actual Seminole, because what happens, people sell the seeds, but they've been open air pollinated and they're not a Seminole pumpkin anymore. So what I like about these guys is they actually germinate and they test their seeds first before they sell them to make sure you're getting something that's grown true to seed. And it's local, they're based out of Mount Dora, which I love that. And then the last one on here is PermacultureLife.com. Dr. Andre, really cool TikTok stuff that he does, but just gives some actual pictures. His occupation is actually a dentist, and he does the gardening and permaculture just as a hobby, so a really cool guy as well. And then my information is down here on the bottom. So those are some of my favorite kind of Florida resources, local ones that are in this area. Because it really is a process of continuing to grow and learn. And sometimes those resources are helpful for a season, and then maybe not so much anymore. One of the things that I've noticed the last year is a lot of the online forums on Facebook, it just gets to be people yelling, arguing, and complaining, and I just can't have that much drama in my life. I just can't deal with all that. So it really is it's an art to find good resources that are knowledgeable, because there is a balance between experience and anecdotal evidence, what you've experienced on your property, and science. Science is real. It's not always 100% across the board, because nature is growing, it's evolving, it's moving, it's a living thing. But those are some of my favorite resources. So I'd like to take a few minutes. Luca's got a microphone here as well, and we'll do a little bit of Q&A time. So we've got about 30 minutes here to do some open question and answer. This is probably the time where you will learn more in the next 30 minutes than you did the last hour, because iron sharpens iron. And chances are, if you have a question about your yard, your property, and you're going, I don't know if I should ask that, chances are 5 other people have a very similar question. So I think this is the funnest part of the class period, is the Q&A time. And so I'll kind of walk around with this microphone, and then Luke will have his up here, and we'll just kind of go. So we got the first question right over here.
What's the dilution on the 100% neem oil per gallon?
I usually use a shot glass per gallon, like about an ounce per gallon, or about a teaspoon in a big spray bottle. That's what I use. That's about what you guys do too, right? Yeah.
When you're applying the 4 to 6 inches of mulch around your fruit trees, are you just keeping it, or are you digging down and doing it again?
That's a good question. You can't touch the tree. So think donut, not volcano. So you don't want to mound it up like a cone up the trunk. You want to keep it back like a donut around the base of the tree. A nice even donut about 4 to 6 inches deep. But the main thing that you want to keep in mind, always use your native soil. Even if you live in a subdivision that has really bad Florida sand, use your native soil. Don't amend in the hole. And here's why. Greenhouses will tell you, add some of this in the hole and it's going to make it grow and look really good. It will for about a month. But what happens is the tree roots love that soil so much, they don't send out roots to establish on their own and look for their own nutrients. You want that tree to have to look for nutrients, send out more roots, establish a better root system. So when you amend your soil, only amend on the top of the soil, because that's slowly going to trickle down over time where it's going to be available to your root system. The second thing to keep in mind is don't apply it around the base. So imagine this little dude right here is my tree. Don't put your fertilizer right here. Go to the edge of the canopy, and right around there in a ring is where you want to put your roots, because that's where the roots transition from the small, hairy, fibrous roots into the main roots, so you're going to uptake way more nutrients out there. If you do it at the base, most of the roots that are absorbing those nutrients, they're not next to the trunk. They're out at the canopy edge of the tree. So that's where you want to apply those as well.
I have 2 questions. When the sprinkler has control, what do you use?
What do you guys use here at the farm for pest control?
So for pest control, we used neem on some insects, and then we use safer soap for some of the other bugs. And I can bring the bottle to use.
Neem and basic
safer
H
soap,
usually.
neem oil, safer soap, and then we also had a product made with thyme essential oil. I think it's called Thyme Guard. It's a natural product made out of thyme essential oil. And if you get it, you can get it online. Make sure you use very, very small. You follow the label because it's very strong. So if you use it the wrong way, you could burn your feet.
And the key, when he says essential oils, these are pre-mixed and pre-diluted. You cannot take, or you should not take your essential oil bottles and just add that to your spray bottle. The terpenes that are in essential oils are so strong, you're gonna really damage the plant in the long run. So just don't take your Young Living or doTERRA bottles and dump them in a spray bottle. You need something like the Thyme Guard that Lou's talking about, because that's already pre-diluted. You said you had a second question?
Yes. I planted a guava tree in March from this farm, so there has some fruit small. Do I fertilize now or no?
Yeah, so the question is, the lady has a guava tree with little fruits, and she's asking if she should fertilize the tree or feed the tree. We in June here, in the next couple of weeks, we're gonna feed all of our trees, the whole property. It doesn't matter if it's a mango with fruits, or a avocado with fruit, or a guava, we feed everything. So it doesn't, as far as we're witness, the fertilizer on the trees with fruits has not affected the fruits.
Let's do a couple on this side.
With the mango tree, do you have to do something special over winter? Because we actually lost. Yeah, and so you were recommending them. So are there specific ones that work well when it gets very cold?
Mangoes that work well in the winter, and how do you protect mangoes in the wintertime?
So, and where do you live? South of 50. Okay, so the lady wants to know. Sorry? Okay, so mango trees and the cold. Yes, if any of you had mango trees last winter and you live here or south, or in the north, or colder, then you know what could happen with your trees. Did any of you lose trees during the cold? Besides this? A lot of you, okay. Yeah, we lost some here too. So the problem with the mango trees, well, first of all, some areas, the lady's mentioning 33. So down south, Roadland, in what we call the Green Swamp, that's a very cold area. Polk City, Polk County, Polk City, Roadland, 33, it's a cold pocket. So it's gonna be borderline for you to grow mango trees down there. Christie's are on Sugarloaf, Montford, Ferndale area, colder than here too, by like 5 degrees. Brooksville, colder. So grow mango trees in areas colder than here. First of all, if you plant a small tree, you will have to protect that tree for at least a couple of years until it gets about 6 feet tall. And if it's a hard freeze like we had this year, you may have to protect even longer. A lot of people grow mango trees in buckets now. So they grow them in 30 gallons, 65 gallons. Some grow them on wheels, and they keep them smaller. So if you keep them smaller, like you see in the greenhouse behind us, we have a lot of small and large mangoes. If you have it in a 30 gallon or 65 gallon bucket, you can grow it forever in those buckets. You trim them to keep them smaller, and then if it gets really cold, you can slide them inside your garage. And then all you need to do is keep it above 30, sometimes 25, 30 degrees. If you have it in the ground and you want to protect it, then a lot of people, they'll build a tank. So you'll build some kind of an igloo around the tree with a plastic. If you use plastic, make sure the leaves don't touch the plastic. And then you want to have a source of heat under the tree. So either some people use Christmas lights, I'm not sure how well they work. You can use a chicken lamp. Or if you have a well irrigation, you put a sprinkler under the tank and you let the water run all night long. Like we do in the greenhouse. That's what we because everything, we run the water all night, and it creates some kind of like a rainforest environment. And it could be 10 degrees outside and will stay around 40 degrees inside. So your keys for mango trees, lychees, strawberry trees, peanut butter plants, all those plants that are not supposed to grow here, you need to create some kind of a greenhouse environment around your tree.
And you can use like frost cloth, works well. If you're doing the Christmas light method, you can't use LED. You got to buy the old school ones that get warm, when you turn them on. The other thing you can do if you have a small area of trees is light a campfire in the middle of it, and the heat from the smoke will actually keep it warm during the night. And if you can't build a tent, you can literally just take your sprinkler, a broadcast sprinkler, and turn it on and leave it on all night long. It's usually going to get the coldest from about 3 o'clock until 6 o'clock in the morning. That's usually here is when it dropped down below freezing. So you can just wake up, turn it on, then you're only running it for a couple hours. But the tent is going to be your best thing. If you can't build a tent, frost cloth, Christmas lights, lighting a campfire, and turning a sprinkler on. Practically speaking, there's a guy, an old permaculturist that lives in the Swiss Alps, and he's growing citrus in the Swiss Alps. The way that he does that is he does really, really thick compost. I'm talking wood chips that are almost a foot thick in between his fruit tree rows, and the compost lets off radiant heat all night long that keeps the citrus alive. And then he has large rocks that he's painted black, and the radiant heat from the sun warms those rocks up by day, and then at night it's just enough to keep things from freezing. So his name is Sepp Holzer. You can find some of the videos of him online growing, oranges in the Swiss Alps, and it's unreal. I'm not that good.
Yeah, and then the other thing that some of our customers have done too, once you create that tent, they have used like a very young manure or mushroom compost, like a fresh manure that is really hot, and you put it at the base of the tree, not against the trunk, but at the base of that tent. And during the night, the heat of the fresh compost or manure will keep that air inside the tank warm enough.
I live in an old orange grove, and it's sandy, but the snails just are all over. And
For me, for snail and slug control, I make beer traps. Just Google how to make a beer trap if you got slugs and snails. That's the easiest thing. The next easiest thing is you don't have a snail abundance. You have a duck shortage. So ducks love snails and slugs and bugs, and they'll leave your plants alone. So I see some.
What's the least viscous spinach that you mentioned up there?
The least of the viscous spinaches, I like the Mayho tree or Aunt Lily's South Sea salad, and probably Suriname are going to be the two of the least viscous.
One more.
Yep.
Do you have any recommendations on how to find manure that hasn't been exposed to pyrolabs?
The fertilizer that Luke sells is pelletized manure, and so that is organic. If you can't find good manure or good compost that is organic, add mushroom substrate or some kind of mushroom compost to it. You can actually buy mycorrhizal fungi powder and add it in. The reason why is mycorrhizal fungi will eat up the heavy metals, the pesticides, the herbicides. They use fungi in bioremediation. So when there's a toxic waste spill, one of the best ways to clean it up organically is mushrooms and growing mushrooms. So if you can't find good organic fertilizer, or Luke is out for whatever reason, then I would just add some mushrooms to an existing compost and let the mushrooms do their job for about 3 months, and they'll also eat it up. There is a spray you can get that goes on the end of your hose by a company called Mushroom Stuff. So and literally it's like a hose attachment, and it's a liquid mushroom. So for people, for example, that have a yard that was fertilized and sprayed in their grass, and you're concerned about eating those chemicals, put that sprayer on the end of your hose and spray your yard with something like Mushroom Stuff or a mushroom inoculant, and that's going to help eat up all of that stuff. It takes about 3 months for the baseline chemicals to go out, 1 full calendar year if it's like heavy metals and that sort of thing. But let the mushrooms do the work. Her question was, when you do wood chips, is there a variety of wood to avoid? Do you want to answer?
Wood chips, any specific to use or not to use?
Yes.
I'm not sure there is any you don't want to use, but the main thing, as far as my experience, is when you use wood chips or any kind of pine bark, like bigger pieces or wood chips, do not bury. You don't want to bury the wood chips. You want to use it as a mulch.
Dressing only, not
dressing. Because if you use wood chips and you mix it in the soil, what's going to happen is the wood chips have to decompose, and all the energy of the soil and the microbes will be taken to decompose the wood chips. So whatever you plant in that soil will not grow well because the energy of the soil is used to decompose the wood chips. So you always want, if you want to mix or bury things in the soil in your raised beds, or use something that has been decomposed, like a good compost, or like a composted manure, or composted mushroom compost, like aged. You want to use aged product to go in the soil.
And sometimes people do ask as well, can you use pine? Is pine gonna acidify my soil? Pine will only acidify your soil if it's green. So if you're taking fresh pine needles and putting them around as a mulch, that will acidify your soil. Brown pine needles are actually neutral. It's a gardening myth that pine needles, no matter what, are going to acidify your soil. If they're green, yes. Once they're brown, it's neutralized and you're good to go. And you can use any tree, whether it's pine or oak or palm or whatever. The major difference is how long is it going to take to decompose. You know, the palms and pines, they're going to decompose pretty quickly. Now things like oak or cherry or maple, those are going to take a little bit longer to decompose. And I like that. I think that's okay to let it decompose at different rates over time, because then you get different fungi and different bacteria. You know, you get a little bit more interesting soil life, I feel like. I just saw Paul in the back. Hey, Paul, somebody asked a question earlier about any good ways to get rid of salt once the salt is in the soil. Do you have any?
Just make sure you've got, you know, well aerated soil. So planting things like the root crops to get a biomass deep in the soil, and
root crops,
then the
so
fungus.
Things like daikon radish or chicory or things that are going to tap root.
Exactly, and then compost, and you know, if you want to do some kind of fungal food in there so that the organic matter can break down into that, you know, just kind of establish a fungal dominant area. That's like the only thing that'll lock up those salts.
Okay, I have two questions. When you're fertilizing, can you put the fertilizer on the wood chips or do I have to dig it in?
Yep.
But, okay, the other one is your spray for the diseases and stuff, I guess. Can you use it as a preventative or do you do it? No, okay.
I started using the ProBio. I spray that about 4 times a year. And when I say I never get powdery mildew, sooty mold, whatever, I don't think I've had it in about 12 years.
And should I use it on just fruit trees and bushes?
Fruit trees, berry bushes, veggies, perennials, whatever you want. Yeah, that ProBio stuff, I mean, I think it was created in Japan, and their office is in the Midwest somewhere, but there's like 21 different kinds of probiotics grown in one mother culture, so they're all working in a symbiotic way anyway. So when you spray them on your plants or on your soil or your compost, the ones that are going to thrive in your environment are going to thrive, and the ones that aren't. But the nice thing with 21 different strains, something is going to do well, and it helps inoculate that plant, and it prevents a lot of those issues.
What months do you do it?
As often as I remember.
Okay. So
Yeah, I do it about 4 to 6 times a year. Just depends on how often, you know, I remember to do it. And you don't need a whole lot. You know, in a backpack sprayer, I use about a half a cup in a backpack sprayer, which is 4 to 5 gallons. Or in a little hand sprayer, which it just takes me too long. I use like a teaspoon. But I mean, those things save forever. I think I've had the 1 jar for a couple of years. It's a great preventative.
But that's the pile,
You could just do ProBio if you wanted. You could just do ProBio water. Best advice for overcoming root nematodes. Can you answer that? Best advice for overcoming the nematodes?
Nematode-eating nematodes.
Nematode-eating nematodes.
Yeah, nematodes. So this young man here is asking about nematodes. Nematodes is a microscopic worm that lives in the soil, mostly sandy soil, all over Florida. And what they do is they go in the roots and they disturb the root system and create some little nodes, and it will really slowly kill the plants or make them very weak. That affects the tomatoes a lot, fig trees, mulberry trees, and it's a big issue. So for fig trees, for example, a good way to prevent that issue is to grow the trees in the ground. So you take a 15-gallon bucket and you remove the bottom. You dig a hole and you bury that bucket in the soil almost to the top, and you fill it up with good potting soil with no sand. And then you plant your fig tree in that bucket. So the tree will be able to grow these roots through the bottom because you remove the bottom of the pot. But the nematodes stay on the top 16 inches of the soil. So by having a bucket in the soil like a barrier, your tree will grow as it's in the soil, and the nematode supposedly will not get to the roots. So that's one way to prevent. Another way is to have as much organic matter in your soil, a lot of compost, because the nematodes, they mostly thrive in the sandy soil.
In nematodes, it's kind of like saying, how do I get rid of bugs? You know, in the phylum Nematoda, there's 1,200-ish different types of nematodes. The ones that we see in Florida that are doing all the damage, they're a very small percentage. So think of it like a bell curve. The job of the nematodes is actually to increase soil health. That's the job that all nematodes are doing. So the problem is, the way that they do that is the nematode's job is to find the plants that are struggling, that are not native, kill them, so that way it basically makes organic matter. They're creating biomass to repair the soil. Here's the problem. All annual vegetables are weak and they're not native. They're mostly things from the Mediterranean region. So what happens is our native nematodes go, oh, that's an intruder, it's weak, it's full of lots of water, let's kill it. So those just happen to be your vegetables. So once you get to the point where those nematodes are satisfied, meaning your soil quality is good enough, like what Luke was saying, you have good organic matter, the bad nematodes are done with their job, and the good nematodes kick in, and then they just work at a microscopic level. So the key is add organic matter. If you've got nematode problems, you don't have too many nematodes. They're doing their job. You need more organic matter. So it's more compost, more straw, more biomass. You need to improve the organic matter in your soil. You're not going to beat nematodes. They're here to do their job. The other thing that you can do is plant natives, or plant ones that are indicative of this area. So instead of trying to grow regular store-bought spinach, try Brazilian shizu, try Suriname, try some of those tropical spinaches, because the nematodes aren't even going to touch them. But those grocery store varieties that we have, most of them are from the Mediterranean, where the weather is different, and here they're always going to be a little bit weaker. Should we grow them? Sure, absolutely grow your tomatoes, but find those ones that are native and increase the organic matter.
How far away from the property line should she plant the trees to prevent them getting contaminated with the neighbor's spray? I'm not really sure. Usually, when farms are trying to be certified organic and they have a neighbor who is not organic, I think there's what they call a buffer of at least 50 feet or 100 feet. Where,
So for most people it is their yard.
So for you, I'm not sure.
I would try addressing it two ways. One is the stuff that's traveling by air. The only way for you to block it is to provide a barrier. So things like a bamboo that's a clumping bamboo. There are clumping bamboos that really do stay put. My favorite one for that type of a purpose is called sea breeze. Paul probably has a couple other ones as well. But sea breeze is a good clumping bamboo. Gets to be really tall. It's edible. It's medicinal. Makes a barrier that you can't drive a truck through. But it does stay put. Now that's going to help prevent and catch the overspray. But what's coming underground, the only way to really fight it is by fungi, mycorrhizal fungi, so inoculating your soil. So what I would do is do like a bamboo hedge along the edge of it, and then do heavy wood chips about 8 or 10 feet out. And bamboo loves wood chips. They love that fungal dominated environment. And let the bamboo stalks block the overspray, and then let the fungi do the work. That's in a small yard. That's the only thing that I can think of. Okay, we're about 5 minutes past on the 10:30. But the good thing, Luke, Sonia, myself, Paula's here in the back.